I want to recognize our chamber leaders who are here today, Board of Governors, Board of Directors, committee chairs, our sunshiners. Raise your hand. We want to thank you. Thank you for all the work that you put in to keep the chamber strong and move us forward. And we're excited. One of our Board of Governors member, Black Desert, is going to be a little feature of today. They're a big piece of the future of Ivins, so we're excited about that. So thank you, Patrick. Thanks for being on the board and for your leadership. I do want to just mention a few of our upcoming events. First, we are headed up to Capitol Hill tomorrow. We'll be up on Friday meeting with our representatives and senators. So if there are any issues that you're dealing with in your industry and your business specifically that need to be brought up in those conversations, please grab Jordan or I. We want to make sure that we've got a full agenda. We've got a lot to talk to them about. Mostly good. We got a few issues we got to iron out. But if there are any issues at the state level that you're struggling with, please let us know. Bring it to our attention so that we can have those conversations and see the movement that we can make at that level. Our other upcoming events, as you know, this is one of our State of the Cities that we jointly host with our awesome area cities. Washington City will be on February 16th, and Santa Clara City will be on February 23rd. So we invite you to join us for each of those and hear what's happening in each of these area cities. It's informative, it's great to be in the know and have that perspective of what's happened in the past and what the future is looking like for each of those cities. We have our Chamber Family Night. We do these quarterly, so if you haven't been out to one, make sure you come. This will be a DSU men's basketball game on February 24th. And then our Chamber Serves project. Where's Donna? Where's Donna? Why is she not here? Donna's at everything.
She's taking an emotional day.
We'll give her that, yes. I know, we need to have a birthday celebration for Donna, right? February 25th will be our Chamber Serves project. It'll be trash pickup with Love Where You Live. Do we have any details where it's at?
Highway 7, it's the airport exit.
Okay.
Right there.
Same as last time? If you were with us, it'll be the same location as last time, but head to the airport and you'll see all of us in our neon yellow picking up trash. So we hope you can join us for that. And we invite you to bring out any of your team members, your staff. Again, chamber service projects are not just for a chamber member, they're for your entire staff. So it's an easy way to do a service project to get your employees engaged in the community. And you don't have to plan it, so you just have to show up. So bring your staff, whoever you'd like to join us, make sure you take pictures, post it to social media. It's fantastic marketing as well. And then lastly, our upcoming Element Awards. If you came to Element Awards last year, our first inaugural year of that award ceremony, and that's our 15 women that we recognize who are doing amazing things in the community. Second year, we just had our photo shoot yesterday, and I didn't think we could outdo last year, and I think we have. We have some just amazing women in the community that will be able to recognize and highlight the work that they're doing. So we invite you to join us on March 31st at the Dixie Center for that award and recognition. With that, I am going to turn the time over to the mayor, but let me introduce you first and share a little bit about you. I think many people know you and they know your demeanor as a level-headed, genuine, and just a kind public servant, and that's oftentimes missing in the discourse that we have at the national level, even at the state level. And so all this other stuff in here is important, but most importantly is just how amazing of a public leader he is, and how lucky we are to have him here in Ivins, of course, but representing more even southern Utah on a broader scale. So Mayor Hart has been a developer and custom home builder for more than 50 years. He has been involved in city government for nearly 24 years. He served on numerous city committees, was on the Ivins Planning Commission, and followed by time on the city council before being elected to mayor 12 years ago and just re-elected. Mayor Hart will be serving for another term. His biggest priorities as mayor are to serve the residents of the city and properly implement the general plan that he has helped craft over his past 20 years. He categorizes himself as someone who is open to hearing and considering ideas from all sides, and he is most interested in finding balanced solutions to the city's problems and issues that benefit all or most of Ivins residents. Please join me in welcoming the mayor.
Thank you. Yeah, he sounds like a pretty great guy. I'd like to meet him.
In a recent Spectrum article, Ivins was portrayed as kind of a backwoods extremist prepper bunch out here with an eccentric mayor. I can assure you we're not backwoods eccentric preppers out here. The mayor part is probably open for debate. I thank you, Don, and the Chamber for hosting this event, for putting on this event. We're pleased to be your host here. So before the blinds go down, talk about a room with a view, huh? I dare say there are not many council chambers anywhere in the world that look like this during the day. Our project, our replacement City Hall project, got underway over 2 years ago as we decided that it was time to move out of our existing City Hall that we had been outgrowing for several years and had kind of reached the point of just we couldn't section off another office or break another part of our council chambers away for another room of any other use. And so recognizing that the Ivins Santa Clara law enforcement, which is Ivins' responsibility, the fire and EMS being the responsibility of Santa Clara City, that they had outgrown their space over in the Santa Clara City Hall that Santa Clara had graciously offered to us when that merger took place. We determined, and the council agreed, that what we ought to do is to repurpose that building to become the Santa Clara Ivins Police Station, and that we ought to build a new city hall on this parcel of ground that we owned. So we went through the selection process for both the architect and the general contractor, and we hit the jackpot on both. I have Pablo Gatay back here. Pablo, raise a hand or stand and take a bow. You ought to, because I can tell you it would not have been possible to have a better experience with either one of those two businesses. When VCBO came for the first time, introduced themselves to the council and asked questions and showed pictures and tried to get a feel for what Ivins City needed and wanted to have, and subsequently met with department heads and staff to figure out how these spaces ought to work. And from the time I saw, now I fancy myself to be a closet architect. I've designed homes for a number of years. And so I sketched something that went out in the RFP. This is the building we want. Didn't look anything like this. Wasn't laid out anything like this, but you know, Mr. Big Shot here, if you can respond to this, you're great. But from the time that they came, and Nathan, so I'd spent days and days figuring out how the building would fit on this lot. And Nathan comes in. Nathan was the principal architect on the job, right? Yeah. Comes in and sketches this out just almost exactly like what you see on a piece of paper. That's why he gets the big bucks. And so they met with us on a number of occasions as we began and went through that planning process. And I want to share a story with you. In one of the early conversations, I mentioned to the architectural team that I wanted the building to somehow reflect Ivins City. I had no idea what that meant, right? Okay, Ivins is a pretty eclectic group of residents, and we've got some beautiful things here, but how do you make a statement about the city? And I went on to explain a brief history of the city, which is this. This began as the Santa Clara Bench. It had no water source, so it was basically just parched red dirt with some sagebrush and other native vegetation. They tried to use it for grazing land and so forth. It was terrible at everything. So in 1911, a couple of enterprising engineers decided that they could bring water from Gunlock up onto the bench by carving a canal across the Red Mountain. And you can see that still as you drive down in the reservation, as you drop down into the valley there. And so they went about that project, and it was completed in, I think, 1913. And in 1918, the first reservoir in Washington County was completed, that being Ivins Reservoir. You've all probably seen Ivins Reservoir. It's not very big. How many acre feet? 900, something like that? so pretty small. And yet, I have friends who've been residents of Ivins for their whole lives who remember learning to water ski out on that reservoir. And I said, so what'd you do? Just turn the wheel all the way and tape it and jump out the back and off you go. Now we have our beautiful park out there, Fire Lake Park, that's a part of the Ivins Reservoir complex. So I explained that the next thing that came to make Ivins possible was water. So we had red dirt, earth, water, and then I shared the experience that our original settler families went through as they homesteaded an acre of ground up here. There were 13 of them originally, beginning in 1921. And they had to carve ditches to get water to their land and carve ditches to be able to have gardens. Several of those families lived in boarded up tents for as long as 2 years out here. Now you picture the middle of our summer, right? Late July, early August, at 110 degrees with no running water and living in those conditions. And endless hard work. So the next meeting that we had, here come the architects back. Here's the theme for the building: earth, water, and hard work. And I got to tell you, to this day, it almost brings me to tears, and it did then. Yes, that's what our city is. And we have tried to build upon that legacy ever since. In addition to coming back with the theme, they come back with a picture of a rammed earth wall. Now, I've been a builder for 50 years. I'd never even heard of a rammed earth wall. That's what that is. And they explain to us how a rammed earth wall is built. It's basically dirt, earth, water with some hardening additives and some coloring compound, and hard work. They literally, the contractor that did this wall, set up a kind of a mini batch plant here. It was like a sand and gravel pit, conveyors and hoppers full of these different colored aggregate. And that thing went along, and they set up a series of forms starting at 4 feet. And each day, you can see what they did. There were three men inside the forms. That wall is 2 feet thick, with mechanical tampers all day long, pounding that earth and water and hardening additives into place. And it ended up looking like that. So that wall is the expression of Ivins City and will forevermore. This is a very special building in a lot of other ways. And Nathan and the design team told me later on that the reason VCBO took an interest in this building is that we had stated in our RFP that we wanted this to be a net zero building for power. We wanted to power this building with power. We wanted it to be the most energy conserving building that we could create. And so fortunately we got them. Then we went through that same process and secured a huge general contractors to build the building. And once again, we hit the jackpot. We could not be more pleased with the work that they did. Other than a couple of technical glitches here at the end, right? As we moved in, tried to figure out how to use all this new technology. And some of it was in a container out in the bay. And so we had to wait for some things to be able to get it fully functional. But it's now operational. We moved in, I believe, late November, right? Yeah. And have been systematically moving in and emptying boxes and trying to make it usable ever since. So we designed the building to be roughly 25% oversized. That building next door served our city beautifully for 25 years. We didn't want to have to go through this again in 25 years from now. And so we're going to invite you, if you'd like, to go through the building after this presentation. You're welcome to go through and see what it's all about. You're going to see a fair bit of open space, and that's for future cubicles as we have to add staff as our city continues to grow. That's enough on the building. We got it covered? So this behind me, this picture shows where we're headed now with the building next door. So the police chief, all he cared about was what we did inside, and we got some bulletproof glass around it, right? Well, then it came time to go through the remodel job, and And the architects had done exactly what we asked them to do. And all of a sudden, we're standing back thinking, oh, it looks a little more like a seminary building maybe than a police station. So the council decided, yeah, the right thing to do would be to invest a couple $100,000 and redo the exterior a little bit and bring it into the 21st century. One thing that is just amazing to me, and I give credit to our city council for being willing to pull the trigger when they did. Our contract with Hughes General Contractors was roughly $5 million. $4.5 million for this building and $500,000 million to remodel the old city hall. So they completed this building nearly on time, despite all of the issues that we're facing in construction right now, and on budget. And the contractor told me later on that if they were to bid this building today, that this building alone would be a $7 million building. So congratulations to us. We're just thrilled that we're able to be in here. And I hope you enjoy. If you'd like to take a tour through. I will tell you that my favorite room in the entire building is the one in that far corner. It's the mechanical room. This building is heated and cooled using a ground source heat pump system. I think we have 20 wells. I didn't count them as they punched them, but I think that's right, isn't it? Under our west parking lot, where 65-degree water is drawn up through a loop, run through the system and exchanged into the fluid that goes throughout the building to a series of individual heat pumps in each office and open areas. And I think it's the most efficient heating and cooling system known to man, at least by my research it is. And in addition to that, our city council funded an extra several $1,000s so that each member of our staff has a thermostat in their own office. You can be 65 in one room and 75 in the room right next to it. But just kudos to the architects and contractors for delivering us exactly what we wanted. And the longer we live in it, the more we realize it's just perfect for us and our needs. Okay. Water is the issue, isn't it? We know that we have a limited supply here. We've been banking on the Lake Powell pipe dream now for a number of years with the expectation that that was going to be under construction by now. And any of you who ever saw Ron Thompson's graphs showed the pipeline kicking in about 2022 or something like that, or 2025. And we're on easy street. We can go for another 30 years almost to build out with the water that we're going to get from that pipeline. Well, the pipeline isn't there, and sometimes I think it's farther off now than it ever has been, despite the fact that 15 or 20 million or more dollars have been spent. An EA, an environmental assessment, has been conducted on it and is currently being refined. So our hope is that someday we'll be able to have that water source, but the fact that that didn't materialize forced the Water Conservancy District and all of our cities to take a serious look at how we're using water. We found that there was a lot of resistance coming against the pipeline from the lower basin states because Washington County, at least according to their view, was not wisely using water. We didn't have really serious conservation programs in place, and we hadn't utilized all of the potential for reuse water, treated water that we can reuse again through the summer months. And so we were kind of forced into a backup plan that we're now having to implement very, very rapidly so that we can continue with the growth that's been occurring in this county, which accounts for, and correct me if I'm wrong, Don, but I think it's still, I've heard as low as 30 and as high as 40% of our economy is growth related. So you can imagine what would happen to that economy if somebody just flipped the switch and all of a sudden that component disappeared. So the district is working frantically to try and pull these other possible sources of additional capacity together so that we can continue to move forward as a county. There's this strange acronym, SSS, that I always get wrong, so I'm not even going to. But it is a standard for the water that the district has to commit for each new building permit. It's called an ERS, ERC, or an ERU, equivalent residential unit. I don't even know what the S is. Neither does Chuck. But the standard that has been imposed on our region by the state is 0.89 acre feet per ERU per year. We've demonstrated to the state that can drop down to 0.78 acre feet per year. Ivins City is currently operating at 0.59 acre feet per year. So we lead the county in conservation. You have to look to the west and realize that a lot of that, as you drive out through Cayenta, is big lots with no water use at all, hardly. And so thanks to them. But we are implementing all of the additional conservation measures that the district has prescribed, and probably going even further. So that's a weird little quirk, right? I sort of vanished, and it does it every once in a while. It's like, I got to go to sleep for a second now, and there you go. Pole sound is on it. So the district response to this shortage is to go gung-ho on reuse water, and reuse water requires storage. And so even with the reservoirs that we have in the county, we fall far short of what we need to store the water that could be processed during the cooler months of the year, put into storage, and then used through the summer, which would vastly increase our capacity to grow and so forth. So that there are a series of 3 reservoirs, one that's currently going under construction within a year up in the Tokerville area. That one's all done, it's got all the environmental work and so forth done. But there will be 3 additional reservoirs that are in the plan that you'll see here in a minute. 2 of them in Ivins. One of them called the Dry Wash Reservoir, which will be out in the Cayenta area, and the other being the Graveyard Wash, which is just south of Highway 91, sort of as you go into the Santa Clara area and you see their public works yard off to your right. That reservoir would be just above that. And between those 2, they're both very small. The Dry Wash Reservoir is only about somewhere around 15 to 9, we're not sure exactly, 15 to 1,900 acre feet. And the Graveyard Wash, I think, is around 1,000 acre feet. But those already have the environmental work done on them, so the district is able to move forward with them rather quickly. Growth. Ivins has experienced a lot of it. I'm not sure that we're growing as rapidly as maybe Hurricane or Washington, but we're growing rapidly enough for our taste. The 2020 census put us around 9,000 residents. We're sure that we're past that now. What the census doesn't tell is how many part-time homes you have that you still get to service, right, but don't get counted for. And we're convinced that we have more than 2,500 and as many as 3,000, potentially even more, part-time residences. Building permits last year, see the graph, higher than ever before. So a couple of big differences in what's going on in Ivins versus previous years. Ivins was always just about single-family growth. Now, the cost of housing, the need for attainable or affordable housing has drawn some multifamily developments into our city. It's interesting when there aren't a lot of tall buildings, long buildings that are maybe less interesting than the appearance of an expensive single-family home. Interesting to hear the reaction to that on the part of our residents. A lot of resistance to it, but we, like other cities, are compelled to have a reasonable, affordable housing program. And sorry, folks, I've been a builder for a long time. You got to take away land, you got to shrink footprints, you got to simplify, you got to go up. That's the only way to do it, short of federally subsidized programs. And so we have a number of projects that are both proposed and currently under construction, most of them consolidated down on both sides of Highway 91. The other thing that is different for us, so Ivins City, you know where we are, right? All of you were brave enough to drive out here and take the extra 15 minutes. Judging by the number I was told signed up, there were another half again that decided, that's too far out there. Well, and that's kind of the word, right? We're out on the outer, at the end of the spoke of the wheel, if you will. So Ivins City knew long ago that we were unlikely to secure a lot in the way of conventional commercial development. And in fact, we didn't want big box stores. We didn't want used car lots. And you'll see in our general plan and ordinances that we specifically don't allow them. So when Harmons decided they were going to locate down in Santa Clara, that sealed our fate. We realized that most of the conventional commercial, at least for the time being, was going to consolidate around that anchor store, and it has and is. And so what were we going to be left with other than maybe a few basic services and so forth? Well, in our general plan, dating back as far as 15 years ago or more, we recognized as a city, as we assessed the attributes of our city, the positives and the negative being that we're a ways away, what in the world could we encourage in our ordinances to come here? Once again, we hit the jackpot. Ivins is a lucky little city. So instead of a Holiday Inn Express, the first thing that walks in the door is Sentier. Sentier is a world-class type of resort. Their marketing is worldwide, probably to billionaires around the world. And they are creating a sanctuary up there with that type of buyer in mind. Now, you say, when? Everybody's asked when. For 8 years, we've asked when. Stan Castleton, the primary developer there, told me when he first walked in the door, these don't happen fast, not this kind. It's going to take 7 or 8 years for us to get going on this, so just plan on that. And guess what? It's been 8 years, and they're moving forward with permits now. We're going to see part of that go vertical this year. Then, here comes Patrick. Happy, smiling Patrick. Hey, we've got something we want to do too, over in those beautiful lava fields. And the concept of Black Desert is presented to the city. What an incredible resort, unlike anything else that we have, I think, in the southern part of the state, right? Just a phenomenal development, huge. They have 300 acres of land, and you talk about a responsible developer, and Patrick's here, and so I'm going to both embarrass him and compliment him. About 250 acres of that 300 acres, which is these precious lava fields that we love out here, is going to be retained. Likely going to go into a conservation easement for the city to have forever. They've artistically worked a 17-hole golf course out through that, that if anything, that green and black together will be just stunning. So Black Desert is currently under construction with phase 1, which includes their hotel and a convention complex, and I think a number of lock-off types, like
300 condos.
yeah, 300 condos. That's what he was trying to say. And I don't know when phases 2 and 3 are going to come about, but I would say in 10 or 15 years from now, this is going to be kind of the go-to place in the county. They're talking about a culinary village. The parking is going underground so that we don't have 10 acres of cars out there to look at as we drive past that lava field. And then a variety of other shops ultimately that you'll see spring up eventually along Snow Canyon Parkway. What a fantastic project, and we're just so pleased that has happened. I served with a council member years ago by the name of Leslie Mendenhall. Leslie told me that she had been in the hospitality business for many years, and that this was a ridiculous idea that Ivins would never attract anything in the way of hospitality out here. I still have her phone number. I'm going to be sending some pictures. Canyon crossings, I skipped over that, Chuck, sorry. So canyon crossings, the first commercial development to occur in Ivins for many, many years, and controversial as heck. So our city has tried very hard to put ordinances in place that kind of distinguish us from other cities in the county. We've got a night sky ordinance that's reflected on the logo you can't see. That's the big black thing over the top. So you can see the stars at night. But we've tried to do that in a variety of other ways. And one of them is to have commercial development that was nestled in, not overly bright, like the mayor, and not impactful to the point that we see as we go through other cities. Well, our ordinances hadn't caught up to that vision. And so when they came in with their application, they could have done almost anything. They could have lit it any way they wanted, and they could have colored it any way they wanted. So a special Ivins resident who I just was introduced to this last council meeting, her name is Pamela Palmer. Pamela Palmer sent me an email, and in that she said, we're worried about what Canyon Crossing could be. I've enclosed here the ordinances that are in place in Scottsdale, Arizona that we think are fantastic. And I wonder if you couldn't encourage them to try and follow these kinds of rules. So I emailed the developer and all of his team, and I by the way, they were fantastic. I read them and immediately knew that she was right. So I sent that to the developer and his team, and I basically said, Ivins is a special place, and you are about to put something on the most special corner in the whole city. So if you don't want to have picketers with pitchforks in your parking lot the day you open, I would pass these ordinances off to your land planner and your architects, and I would let that be your Bible until as you put your project together. Now, how often do you think somebody would actually do that? I mean, we developers have got a terrible reputation of just, the heck with you, we don't care. You know, we're here to make our money and go away. These guys actually did exactly that. And that you don't see gas stations like that, right? Very often. The pumps are tucked inside, and the outside of that building that mostly doesn't have any windows going to the inside is designed to look like that so that it blends with the rest of the complex. I think it's a beautiful project. As I understand it, they're about half leased out now or close to it. And so we're getting some business in Ivins City. Okay, we're going to jump back, Chuck, because I overlooked you. I'm going to jump back to water for a minute because cities have got, we're a small city. We don't have a huge budget to work with. And so you have to think about where your money's going to go. And when it comes to the water issue, Ivins City has been in the poor position of utilizing solely culinary grade water. It comes from Quail Creek, piped all the way to Ivins. We have very little secondary water use in our city. Well, that's embarrassing for a city that's trying to be conservation minded and trying to be responsible when it comes to the use of water. And so I'm going to let Chuck, our city engineer, take a minute and show you briefly what our plans are to change that.
I'll just use this microphone here, Mayor. I just put on the screen our irrigation plan because we have a culinary system that does a pretty good job of serving our city right now. And we're running out of culinary water, but looks like there's going to be opportunities for us to obtain irrigation water, especially with the 2 reservoirs that we showed you earlier that are coming into our city. So we've put together an irrigation system plan. Basically, we're using existing pipes that have been put in by the developers over the years because we've had an ordinance in place since I think 2002 or 2003 where developers are required to put irrigation lines in with the culinary lines, even though we don't technically have an irrigation system in place. So our hope and plan is a 5-phase plan to go ahead and start delivering this irrigation water throughout the whole city. And then that will enable the culinary system to remain just as it is, and as new growth comes on, then it'll still have the capacity to serve that new growth because we've taken some of the demand off of the culinary system with the irrigation system. It's expensive though. The first phase alone is like $6 million. And I think all 5 phases are $30 million, and that doesn't include the reservoirs that are being built by the Conservancy District. And then these phases it's not gonna happen overnight either. Each phase is probably gonna take 2 years or so to get it done. So this is a multi-year plan, and we'll develop it and install it as we need the water to service these future developments. And that's kind of how we see our way out of our current water crisis, and especially if we're able to generate new water sources through water reuse, which is really kind of the idea of why we want new reservoirs out here, is to put reuse water into those pipelines. And so this is our solution, and that's about all I have, Mayor.
So zip to roads.
All right.
How many of you drive 91? You ever use that to go over to? Okay, you like driving 50? Say no.
And all this. So this is our transportation master plan.
Do the 91.
Okay, you bet. And one of the big parts of our transportation master plan, one of the most important elements of it right now for us, our next big project, is to improve Highway 91. If you've been out on Highway 91, you've probably seen that the road's getting a little old, a little ragged, a little bumpy, and not super safe for anybody trying to ride a bike in the shoulder or anything like that. There's really no place for people to walk. There's no place for people to bike except for in the travel lane itself. We've actually had some accidents along there. I think a few years ago we had a fatality. And so we are super anxious to get something done out there. Unfortunately, it's not really cheap to get things done on it because it's 3 miles of roadway, and we're obviously working with a pretty limited budget. We do have some grant monies that are helping us out here, but we would have liked to have widened the road the whole distance from 200 East all the way to the Shivwits. So 200 East is down there on your bottom right-hand corner, and all the way up to Ivins Reservoir is kind of the full distance we'd like to widen, but we only really have enough money to widen it out to where you see Quilvasta Drive. So the widening is going to include wider shoulders for bicycles. It's also going to include turning lanes for those intersections where we're not putting roundabouts. There's 2 intersections where we're going to be putting roundabouts. So that's at 400 West and Quilvasta Drive. But another huge part of this project, and we feel is super important, is we want to install another shared use paved, separate from the road, trail for use of bikes and pedestrians, all the way from 200 East all the way to Ivins Reservoir. It's a 3-mile trail. It's not a cheap trail to build, but even though we know we're short on money, we felt like it was important to get the whole length in as part of this initial phase of this project. Hopefully we can finish the rest of the project and get it widened all the way out to the Shivwits boundary. But for now, we've got this project slated. We're hoping to bid it in a couple months, and then hopefully it'll be under construction a few months after that.
The donation box is just outside the door. So Chuck mentioned that we have a couple of roundabouts that will be on Highway 91. That'll certainly be different for everybody. But roundabouts are a part of the fabric of Ivins City. You'll notice that we don't have a single traffic signal in Ivins City. Our night sky ordinance would just be blown to bits with a traffic signal. Believe it or not, they're terrible light polluters. And so my hope is that we never have to have one. And we've gone through a design of our traffic master plan, and all the major intersections we intend to put in roundabouts. Well, why roundabouts? Do any of you hate them? I have people tell me they just hate them. You're brave enough to say it. Maybe some of the rest of you. So the problem with the roundabout is that folks seem to have a hard time understanding the concept of a yield sign. Seems really simple to me. You pull up, you yield anybody in the circle, and then you go, right? The fact is that roundabouts convey traffic far faster than traffic signals do. And they're far safer because folks are compelled to slow down. Except the guy in the 1997, I think, Ford pickup, white Ford pickup, that lines himself up in the outer lane, goes through at a full 50 miles an hour to the inner lane and straight through down there, and he's about nipped me a couple of times. Our police chief gave me an honorary badge. Never mind, I don't want the rest of it to go out on television. Okay, we're running out of time, really quick. Parks and Recreation. Ivins City has got a very robust parks program, recreation program. We're limited in park space, and so trying to plan ahead. We have filed an application to the BLM in what's called recreation and public purpose transfer of the use of the land to us, and have gone through the environmental process and are now close to, we think, having an agreement with the BLM to create a substantial park property down south of Highway 91, kind of across the wash. Right now, we show that at being about 28 acres. We haven't fully purposed it yet. In fact, we were talking to Kevin about what we might do with that space. That 100 acres that we approached them about, which is going to drop down to maybe 50 or 60, will also house a new public works yard. We've outgrown that as well, and a new cemetery. Believe it or not, we're dying fast out here. Our cemetery, seems like we build a new section and then we've got to start building a new section. We've only got a limited capacity up where our current cemetery is. So the plan is that we will create a second cemetery down in that area. Okay, and lastly, I'm glad I've got Kevin here, and Chris, is it? Liz, sorry. Oh yeah, I'm Chris. My sister is Liz, gotcha. And I don't see anybody from Cayenta, but Ivins is a wonderful place to come and visit and find entertainment. The Center for the Arts at Cayenta, I've been to a number of productions and other kinds of events out there, concerts. It's fantastic. It's a beautiful little black box, seats maybe a couple hundred people, Kevin, I think, or a few more. And it's a very intimate setting, and the caliber of production they put on out there is just great. And of course, the Art Village that has Zatava Gardens restaurant out there, you can go and spend an afternoon and evening out there and just have a wonderful day. And then there's Tuacahn. Gosh, if somebody just laid out the chips on a table and said, okay, all you cities in the county, you get to pick which of these things you want. If I'd been the first pick, Tuacahn would have been it. And boy, thanks in large measure to Kevin and his management of that place. Look what Tuacahn has grown into. It is one of the truly great entertainment venues in the country. I would stand Tuacahn up against any place else. Not the biggest, but boy, a concert there is a great experience, right? And Kevin, how often do you hear from these artists that you bring in, wow, we had no idea. Do you guys know what you've got here? Pointing, speaking to the audience. It's incredible. And now Tuacahn, judging by what I read for the the spring and fall concerts and the summer schedule, you're doing more than you've ever done out there, right? And you just pack the place all the time. So I would suggest this. I used to be able to go up there just about any evening and say, you know what, I'd like to go see these guys. Oh, okay, here are your tickets. If I'm not 3 months in advance, I don't get to go see the groups or the shows that I want to see. So I would get my season tickets now if I were you. So that is my presentation. Thank you so much for being here. I would certainly entertain any questions if you had any. Really? I did that good a job? I told you everything you want to know about Ivins? Wow, Chuck, do I get a star for that? Yes,
How many acres are the new reservoirs, the two?
Well, that is going to depend. I don't know the details on Graveyard. We're looking at, do you remember how many acres?
I think it's 60 acres.
Yeah.
I think it's 60 acres.
So just for perspective, the dry wash reservoir potentially will be about double the size of Ivins Reservoir in capacity, not double the footprint, because Ivins Reservoir is very, very shallow. This one's intended to be dug out deeper. Anything else? Okay. Love you. Thanks a million for coming out to good old Ivins City. Thank you.